We have so many stories in our lives, but our stories are not always heard. On the Hear My True Story podcast, we tell our own true stories.
Before the white car backed, our head teacher had scattered. Looking at him, I could only see his tie that was flying backwards, waving at us, and he disappeared in thin air.
I want to share my life story. I want to share my voice with the people because I know that just a small joke I can tell through this podcast, it will make someone smile.
When you ask me what I fear most in life, I would definitely respond to you and say it's fear itself.
We are fighting for togetherness. We are fighting for equal rights. We are fighting to end injustice.
You don't have to be a storyteller or writer because, guess what? Life writes the best stories.
Hear my true story.
This is your favorite time of the week with your number one podcast.
Hear my true story.
Yeah, our dear listener, thank you so much for joining us on Hear My True Story podcast. It is me, Otako, your host, and I'm really, really excited to be here this week again. Wow. Guess what? We have a wonderful guest this week. A very special guest from Egypt, Africa, and it's so nice to hear more experiences from people from different parts of the world and different parts of the continent. Yeah, so in today's episode, we shall get to know more about the artist who we shall talk to, and also we shall get to know more about her personal experiences and knowledge about theater, maybe also knowledge about other creative arts that she does. And also we shall get to know more how can she really do art or do theater in Egypt, and what someone needs to know, what's happening, how it was it for her in the times of COVID-19. So in this episode, I would like our dear listeners to stay on and get to know more. Who is our guest?
This week's special guest on your favorite podcast.
Hear my true story.
Yes, our dear guest. I'm really happy to have you this week on our podcast, Hear My True Story. And you're welcome.
Yes, Otako, I'm very excited to be here, and I'm looking forward to sharing my true story with you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Oh, I'm really happy. By the way, when I contacted you and I asked you to be a guest on my podcast, and you're like, yeah, right, I like that. I was so excited. And because on our podcast, we just create a platform people to tell their own stories, experiences, to share their knowledge with other people who are listening. And today, we are looking forward to hear from you. So before we start, I would like to ask you to maybe introduce yourself so that the listeners get to know you. They get to know who is the person speaking, who's the person behind the microphone or behind the computer.
Yes, of course. Well, it was really nice when you sent me. It's always nice to share stories and hear stories from other people, of course. I'm Isra Ghazali. I'm an artist from Cairo, Egypt. I work mainly in theater for young audiences, children. But I also work as a set designer or art director for in the media, like on TV, commercial sets and movie sets and things like that. But my main passion is theater, and theater for children, to be specific.
Wow. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. And I'm sure I really like the fact that you talked about theater for young audiences. But then before we go to that, I want to ask you, could you maybe say something about Egypt? Maybe some listeners don't know where Egypt is found. A little bit about Egypt, if you wish.
Of course. Well, Egypt is in the north of Africa. It's right on the Mediterranean and the Red Sea. It's like on the corner of Africa. And Egypt is a very, very old civilization. It's like something like, I don't know, some say 3,000 years or 7,000 years. I'm not really sure. But it's old. It's where the ancient Egyptians lived and where we live now. It's a bit hot now here since it's summer. It's usually the hottest weather is in August. So we're melting a bit, honestly, with the high temperatures here. It's nice. I mean, I have a lot of complaining to do about Egypt, but I love it anyways. It's my home country.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's in short. I don't know what else can I say about Egypt, honestly.
Yeah, I like the fact that Egypt has a lot of history, and it is a really everywhere. When I'm a Christian, so when I read the Bible, I read about Egypt at some point. So
Yeah.
so that's it. Yeah. However, the hotness, I think this year it has been so hot everywhere. Yeah, I'm in German right now in Marburg, but it's so hot. You know, it's really hot. I think, I don't know, 36 degrees. Sometimes it goes up to 32 or maybe 36, 40 sometimes. So,
Wow. Yeah.
and the atmosphere is really warm. You know, how do you call it? The humidity is so high. Yeah.
Yeah. Same here. It's incredible. I mean, it's not the worst summer we've had. Like in the past couple of years, I think summer was way hotter than this year. But still, I mean, it is still very, very warm and very humid. I think humidity this year is really higher than the years before, even though the temperature is not so much. And some days it's very humid, and some days it's just dry heat, and that's even worse.
Yeah, the dry heat, that's what I really find difficult most of the times. It can be really so dry and you can't, it is really so much. But anyway, we have a challenge. Global warming, you know, climate change, something we need to fight. I mean,
Yes.
something we need to do as we humans.
Something we need to realize, like a real issue. I mean, especially here in Egypt, there's not much awareness, to be honest. So it's insane what people are still doing despite all the signs that we've been seeing and living of global warming, and still they just choose to ignore it. I don't know. Some are not even aware of what global warming is.
Yeah, that's the thing. One time, recent, I was talking to members from my organization in Uganda, because I have an organization in Uganda, and we are talking about climate change. And the point is that even in Uganda, there is no awareness about climate change. What they need to do is something that more in the global north, you hear a lot about it in politics. You hear people pushing for it, but like my home country, Uganda, it is not among the hot topics to talk about.
Yes. No, I yes, that's true. But I also sometimes think about it a lot. I mean, like for example, like here in Egypt, because there are far more, I don't know, persistent issues for the people that people can relate with, like very close issues, like people not affording to buy food, for example. If I can't afford to buy food, I will not worry about global warming. I'm dying anyways. So I think that's the problem, and also because politics and the system and the media is not really focusing on global warming. They're busy discussing other things, like trying to market for the government.
Yeah, that's the thing. There are more social problems that people cannot focus on climate problems at the moment. Yeah, anyway, before we start, I would like to know, our listeners maybe would like to know, what is your story? Why did you end up being an artist? What was that moment that turned you up to becoming an artist?
Yeah, well, when I first finished high school, I was very interested in studying fine arts. I loved to draw as a child. I was not very good at it, but I really enjoyed it. And I felt that this was something that I would like to study more. And so I joined the Faculty of Fine Arts, where I studied set design. And then in my second year in college, I found out about the theater troupe or the theater group that performed for the university, And it was like a student activity where all the students who were interested in theater got together and they worked together on performances, and they got into like a big competition. They compete with other universities and other theater groups. And so I heard about it, but I never thought that I would actually join and be, and I was too anxious, to be honest. I never thought that this was something I could do. But I had a friend who wanted to join, and she was a bit shy to go on her own. So she asked me to join her. And so I told her, okay, I will just come and watch. I will not be auditioning or anything. I'm just going to sit there and watch everyone else. So I walk up with her. They were holding these auditions at the rooftop of the dean's building in college. And so we went upstairs, and at the door they said, if you're not auditioning, you can't come in. So that was a bit frustrating. And my friend was like, come on, just audition anything, do for anything. So I just looked at the paper they gave me, and it said singing. So it's like, that's easy. I'm just going to sing anything. And even if I'm horrible, who cares? So I just walked in, and lucky for me, honestly, now when I think about it, singing was the last thing they did during the day. They started with acting auditions and then the writing workshops, and then they finished the day with singing. So I could stay and watch the whole thing. And I stayed the whole day. I saw everyone audition, and then it was the singing time. So I sang my song, and it was fine. And then at the end of the day, the director, who was like the head of the jury judging the auditions, decided that he will not pick people. He will just let everyone who's interested in, and then they will have like some kind, like they would have exercises or practices where they will see if people are really going to be able to commit or not, and they will take it based on commitment and interest in theater, not based on talent. So so at the end of the day, the director says, whoever is interested in acting, you can stand on this side, and whoever is interested in writing would stand on this side, and singing would go here. And I have no idea why I got up and stood with the people who were interested in acting. I honestly have no idea. I was just lifted up and I walked in that direction. And the whole time I was just saying to myself, what are you doing? What are you doing? Where are you going? Yeah. And that's it. And that's how it started. I got into theater. We started rehearsing. We performed a small play on that rooftop for students for our fellow students, our colleagues. And I wrote my first scene ever, and I performed it. And it was amazing. I couldn't get over it. It was very overwhelming, very emotional. I just fell in love with acting and with theater. So I was like, this is it. This is what I like. And it was all like a coincidence. And I've been doing it since then. Yeah.
Wow. Since then, you became an artist. Really prominent artist.
Yes.
Wow. That's
my curse, my friend.
That's a wonderful and beautiful story. Imagine you waking up and just going to, let me push you, and then you end up becoming your career.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's nice. That's really, really, really interesting story. So to just maybe, you mentioned it already before in the beginning, but maybe you can make it clear for the listeners, where do you focus in your art as a person? Which...
So after I graduated, a few years after, I was introduced to a theater festival that's held here in Egypt every year, called Hakawi International Arts Festival. And this is an arts festival that's mainly focused for children. It's an international children's arts festival. And they first contacted me because they needed an actress who could interpret an English performance live from English to Arabic for the children who did not understand English. And they wanted someone who could act and be a part of the performance so as to make it less boring for the kids to have to wait for the subtitles or for the interpretation. So I went and I met the people, the organizers of the festival. I met the company that was performing the theater performance that I was going to interpret. And then I worked with them and I got to watch the rest of the performances. And I was really amazed. And I was very interested in doing something for children. And that was in 2017, I think. And since then, I've been focused on making theater for children.
Oh, wow. And what is theater for children? Because there's theater for children, yeah, and then there's also theater. Is it also there that way you can say theater for children or theater with children? What is the difference? I don't know.
Well, the difference is theater for children is when professional artists create and perform a piece that is meant for children. It's like watching children's films or cartoon or that is made for children to watch. Theater with children is when you work with the children to perform a play where the children perform themselves or take a part in the process and in the play.
So do you do both of them?
My main focus is making shows for them to watch, but I also work with the children in workshops. Like sometimes I teach drama workshops for kids, and sometimes we work together during these workshops on creating performances where the kids get to perform and create stuff and build sets and all that. But my main focus as a professional artist is making theater for them to watch and attend.
Okay. Wow. And why did you choose the children? What makes you not to
Well, I
work
was
with the
very
adults?
interested because when I first saw this festival, I remembered myself as a child, and I thought that this was something that because a little bit of background story. I was born and raised in Saudi Arabia. I'm originally from Egypt, like my parents are from Egypt, but my father was working in Saudi Arabia the time I was born. So I was raised in Saudi Arabia for many years. I think I moved back to Egypt. We would come to Egypt in summers and all, but we moved permanently back to Egypt when I was in high school. And in Saudi Arabia, there was not much access to arts. There was not much interest in arts at the time when we lived there. I mean, now they're starting to build like a cultural scene where they get artists and create pieces of art and so on. But back at the day, there was no interest in art whatsoever. So I was never, I've never seen a theater play in my life as a child. All we did was watch movies or cartoons or like Disney films and all that. And when I saw Hakawi Festival and what they did and the approach they had for theater for children, it felt that this was something nice and interesting. And I think theater is very important for children. It's a part of it's a part of a child's life to be exposed to art, and I think it's important. It helps them. It helps with the imagination, the creativity. They get to think. It's the same for grown-ups. I mean, but having something that is focused, that is made for children, that also adults will enjoy. By the way, it's not like, because I've watched the performances and I really enjoyed them as an adult, and they were amazing to me. And even some of the performances, I thought, how is this for kids? I mean, I'm not sure if kids will understand this. And then when we get outside after the performance and I start to talk with some of the children who attended, or I hear them talking to each other, they get everything. They get it and they're super interested, and they have this, and they even sometimes understand it a completely different way as to what I got from the piece. So that was very interesting for me. And I thought that I really want to do that. I want to start working on theater for children, because I think this is the future of any society. I mean, if there's anything wrong with any society, you cannot really change the grown-ups.
Yeah, that's the thing.
It's not easy to spread awareness among the grown-ups. However, it's very easy with the children. And that being said, I'm not also a fan of work or theater work that is more of like a lesson and has an obvious moral of the story, or that enforces certain ideas or certain values in the children. I like more the work that raises questions, like something that will raise a question and make the children question things. And I think that's how people learn, and that's that's what's interesting, is to not tell them what's right and what's wrong. No, just raise the question and have them decide for themselves what they choose.
Yeah, I get that. So,
Yeah.
just to ask something, maybe because you just mentioned something with children theater or theater for children. How is it in Egypt? How is the industry for theater for children? How is it? Is it so big? Is it that many people are doing it, or is it a few artists?
I mean, it's not very small. There are a few artists doing it, but honestly, and I'm being a bit judgmental here, I'm sorry, but most of the artists here that do work for children, they do it. And this is my problem with most of the theater. I mean, not just for children, and theater in general in Egypt, is they do it very old school, and it's the same thing we've been doing for ages. And I don't think this works with the new generations, and it doesn't work anymore because life has become so fast paced and is so different, and the children know way more than we think. And that's my problem, because in general, I think whenever everyone's thinking about making a theater play for kids, the first thing they think is like, okay, we'll get some puppets, we'll have like an ancient story that the kids already know, and we'll just perform it for them with like cute voices, and we talk down to the kids, and that's fine. And I mean, while this is okay if you do it, it's fine if that's what you like. But for me, it's not what I like. I like more something that is experimental, like I said, something that raises questions, something that is interesting, something that's modern, that copes with the life that we're living, and that doesn't look down on children and think of children as they know less, because you never know. You can never assume what the child knows or what the child will understand. They always know more than you think.
Yeah. So what you mean that you mentioned about experimental theater, something is experimental. Do you also fuse experimental theater with theater for children?
Yes, definitely. Yes, definitely. To me, the process of creating theater for children is something where I will be enjoying myself and exploring and playing. So I put myself in a state where I'm just exploring things and I'm playing with it, and I'll try to turn this play and exploration and enjoyment into a performance where the children get to watch it and enjoy it as well. So it's about that's what I mean by experimental. And because it's experimental, I'm experiencing things, I'm trying and experimenting with materials, different objects, different concepts. The play I'm working on now is a story about a donkey. And the reason why it's a story about the donkey is that as kids, we always called each other's donkeys here in Egypt. We use it homar. We call each other homar, and that's supposed to mean you're stupid, you're dumb, you don't understand. And that was very common. So people always think of a donkey when the first thing you say is like this preconceived idea that donkeys are stupid, and they're stupid animals, they don't understand anything, and they're stubborn, and people have this misconcept about donkeys. So I decided to create a performance about a donkey. And because I've read a bit about donkeys and I've heard stories from different cultures about donkeys, and they're incredibly smart. They're the exact opposite of what people think of them. So I decided to work on this concept. So I put this as a concept, and I'm starting to play around with different materials to use to tell a story of a donkey who's not so stupid, who's actually very smart, maybe a bit stubborn at some points, but to try to understand more about this animal. And because also there's a lot of animal cruelty happening here in Egypt. And also from children, like you would see children on the street being aggressive with animals like cats and dogs and donkeys and horses. So I think it's important to just put it out there as a question. Why do we think donkeys are stupid? Where does that come from? And just have them question and ask themselves. And if one child just walks out and sees a donkey and thinks to themselves, what if this donkey was smart? How does this donkey feel? And that would be enough for me. And that would be really nice to have put that idea somewhere out there for someone to think of.
Yeah, I get that. So I find that you make a character that children can really relate with and also think about what the actions that humans do to maybe a donkey. People thinking that children are that they don't understand and everything should be done for them. I mean, for me, I talk from my experience as a child who grew up from Uganda in East Africa. Children were seen as just children. You don't question, you don't have to say anything. You have to follow what the adults do, what the adults say you to do. So I find I can really relate with this, that when the children are not given this right to decide what to do.
Yes, exactly. And it's the same here. And this is what needs to change. It's just not right, and I think, and this is part of my work as well, but this is more focused on the adults, on getting them to understand that children are not your property and they're not meant to just listen to you, and they deserve and they should get respect and be respected as individuals. They're not just objects that we're shaping into whatever people we want them to be. So this is it's a lot of work, honestly, but it's interesting. It's really nice, and it's always interesting because children teach you a lot. When you work with kids, they teach you a lot.
Enjoying this episode? Leave a review now.
Hear my true story.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, like, I can just share with you my personal experience. You know, I work in a kindergarten right now. I'm doing a training to be an educator in kindergarten. Yeah, or maybe you work in the youth groups or work in open groups for young people and children. But now I work with children from 3 to 6 years. And guess what? Because I'm learning the language, I tend to learn a lot with the children. Because when I talk with them, I'm talking with them as they understand me because they're humans, I'm a human. So we speak at the same level. Yeah, we interact at the same level. So with this training, I also get to learn so much that, wow, I didn't experience these opportunities of being taken as a human. But now I'm working with children and I learn so much from them. They teach a lot and they know so much that we can't get when we don't give them the ear to listen to them.
Yes, that's exactly true. And I also, in the past year, I was also taking this master class with a theater company from the UK. It was like an online master class. And the master class was about creating theater for children with learning difficulties. And the main focus was children on the autistic spectrum. And it's a big issue here because there's a lot of, what do you call it?
Discrimination?
No, there's not discrimination. There's people, like, for example, I don't know the word for it, so I'm just going to give an example. Like some parents who have children who are on the autistic spectrum would deny it instead of realizing it and dealing with it in the best way for the child. They start to deny it and say, no, there's nothing happening with my child, and they try to deal with them and try to treat them like how they would treat any other kid, and it just doesn't work because they have different needs and they need different things, and the parents just choose to ignore it. And some parents who acknowledge it and know what's happening, they would sometimes hide their children from other people. And so there's a lot of like stigma going around it. So it was very interesting working or taking this master class because we got to work with a big group of autistic children. And it was very interesting because at first I was a bit I was really nervous because I didn't know if what to expect or what could happen or what could go wrong or if I would do something that's not right, or how would I be able to deal with them. And then when we started to learn more, and the things we were taught in the master class, when you come to think of it, is in it should apply to all children actually. And it was the main thing was creating a safe space for these kids to express themselves. And so I think this is a right for all children. They deserve a safe space to express themselves. They deserve to not be discriminated against or that being said, like, not just isn't discriminated as what we first think of the word discrimination, but for example in schools where they create like competitive environment for the kids. So one kid would be like the good kid who listens to the teacher, who does all the homework, that's the good kid, and the other kids, they're not so good. So this places like this expectation on the children. Some kids are just not good at school. That doesn't make them any less. So yeah, and all those things. And so when we worked with these children, they taught us also a lot, because the rule was that we just explore with them. We're not trying to teach them anything. We're not trying to give them anything like information or tasks or activities. We're just there in the space, exploring the space with them. So that was very interesting, because you got to actually be there in the moment, be there with these kids, and you got to see them, got to know them. They got to see you and got to know you. So it was a very interesting experience. And I think it's very applicable in every situation with all different kids, with from every background, and from every family, and whatever type of difficulty they struggle with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, is your theater for children or theater with children inclusive?
Yes, that's my main focus. I really try to focus on making it all inclusive. It's honestly a big process. There's like so many factors that you have to consider and put in, and then because some things are not good for everyone, so you have to state what's happening in the show and what could possibly be a trigger for some children. Like if this show is about sound and the sound is too loud, maybe some children will not enjoy the sound, so it's better if they don't see this show. But I try to make it so that it's good for everyone. Everyone can see it, everyone can attend, everyone will enjoy it. There will not be any triggers of any kind. But it's still, I'm still a work in progress, and I'm still learning. So I still have a lot to learn. So I wouldn't say 100% all inclusive. That's my goal, and that's what I hope that I could create someday. Theater performances that are all inclusive for all kids.
Yeah, wow. It's really nice to hear it from a director yourself and a writer, to think that way, that, yeah, I need to be inclusive, and I'm working hard to making my art so inclusive for everyone to be really able to enjoy my product or my work. That's really, really wonderful. I know you have a lot of things to share, but I wanted to move on to the other question that I want to ask you. Are you a full-time artist?
I try, yes, but I have to make a living, so sometimes I do other things too, like other separate jobs, just to make money. But my main focus is being a full-time artist. Hopefully one day. And that being said, I would do any type of art. Like now, I've just recently started painting as well, because I studied design and I used to paint back in school. So I'm just exploring all things art. So yeah, I think I could say I'm a full-time artist. I hope to be.
You hope to be. And what makes someone not be a full-time artist, maybe in the context of Egypt?
Money. Art doesn't make money here.
Is there like a social support, maybe, let me say, artistic support funding that comes into support freelancer artists or maybe independent artists?
Very few, honestly, with very little money and so many people applying that it's not even an option. And recently also, I've just learned that some, like a lot of the donors, they're starting to shift their focus onto other things apart from art, like things like social development and developmental programs and things like that. So there's even less funding now.
So you mean,
it's a bit difficult. Yeah, you can't really count on it to make a living.
So because there's a less funding in art and culture, that is now moving away. And how is the Egypt state? Is it also supporting, or everything has to come from donors from outside the Egypt system?
Yes, mostly, yes. There's a very few grants coming from like Egypt, from the government itself, but most of it is from outside donors who are now, like I said, shifting their focus away from arts and culture.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, that's the challenge. I think it may be the challenge to most of African countries that governments don't support art and culture. Yet art and culture is the one that preserves our one. It without there's no social development without art. You get that? You are talking about working with children, informing them for them to know what's their right, for them to know what decision they can do by themselves, what they can decide. And all this is done through education. And art is another form where you can use people to learn, to experience, to to have stories heard and told. So I think they need to revise this. I don't know. It's something that we can do as we artists.
Yes, yeah. I hope they realize this before it's too late. And I that's my struggle and that's my fight. I'm always trying to find a way to make a living through art. It's not easy, and it's not working until now. But I'm hoping that someday I will find a way to make it happen, because for me it's very frustrating to only depend on donors and support, because it's not sustainable. It's not something that works every time.
Yeah, you're right. Donors are good, but donors also have strings attached with art, and they may push your art to be driven to their side of the story, which sometimes can be difficult. Also, it's not, you are not really full at knowing that, the money is there or it's not there, because you have to apply every year. You have to try again. It's luck. Yeah.
Exactly. And art is about personal experiences and your personal ideas and your creativity. So that's also another restriction when it comes to donors. Like you said, they always have strings attached with them. There's always some type of agenda and some type of direction that they want you to move in. So if you want to get this funding or support, you will have to work on their version of the project, on their direction, not what you actually want to do. And then it also makes you always trying to sell your ideas. So I have to polish everything, and I have to make sure that it's suitable so they would like it and give me the funding. It's really exhausting for me, and I feel like this is something that would exhaust any artist, to always be polishing and trying to get your idea to be accepted by the donors. So
I have an experience, right? Like for me, I can share it. Maybe also the listeners will get to know, maybe to know more about it. Because in Uganda, I do also have an organization that uses art, and it's really not a big organization. It's a small organization with young artists, young people who are really trying hard to survive with art, but also to use art to tell their own stories. But the challenge is that funding are given to big organizations that are already known by either by someone in the state, or maybe they are organizations that are owned by someone who's coming from the global north, who has like networks already in the global north. That's how fundings are given. I mean, they are not really given with the small organizations that are doing work with people in art. Rarely get these fundings. If they get, it's by luck. I don't know how is it like for you here. I mean, in Egypt, is it really free and fair?
It's almost the same. And the other thing is, even if you do get the funding, so you get it once, and then even if you have a very good idea, the next time there's funding, they would choose someone else just because. And I think that's fair, because they need to give other people the chance as well. But it's like I said, this is not a sustainable format to create art and sustain yourself with art, because for an artist to grow and develop and create more art and more advanced art is to keep working and keep trying and work on many different projects. So you need continuous funding or sustainability when it comes to finances and money. But at the same time, if I'm a donor and I give you the grant this year, the next year I would prefer to have give someone else the chance.
Yeah, I understand.
As an artist, it's the other way. I need to keep working on different other projects to continue to work. And that's what happens in a lot of cases. Is there are a lot of artists that start, make a really big, good project, and that's it. And they just fade away because they don't get any more funding.
But is it free and fair that someone can win the funding, or is it like you need to know someone within some from some powerful offices or powerful decision makers? It is the same in Uganda. You need someone from in the powerful position to recommend you to get this funding, or you need to be someone who's known by the donor themselves.
Yeah. Well, sometimes, honestly, sometimes, yes, this is the case. Actually, most of the time, this is the case here as well. But it also depends. I mean, if it's a really good project, and that's what I mean, you have to really sell the project. If it's a really good project, really well presented, you might get the funding, even if you don't know someone or if you don't have anyone. But if there is someone that has the vitamin B with them, they would get it definitely. It would work in their favor. So yeah, I mean, corruption is everywhere, and here in Egypt, there's a lot of that.
Yeah. In Uganda, I talk on the side of Uganda because I do there a lot. There's a lot of corruption, not just in the government, but in the donation business. Donors work with corrupt officials in Uganda and getting funding. It's a lot of corruption. That's why most of the times when I see people winning, because like in Uganda perspective, most people who win this art funding are either white people who are coming from Europe, or either they have corrupt people in the government that can really push for them to get that funding. Either in art or in health, it is just the same story. There's a lot of corruption.
Yes, and here it's the same. It's the same. And the funny thing is, those people getting the funding, because they have good connections, are people that don't need funding whatsoever. And they get a lot of money in funding, like a lot. It's insane.
Yeah, it's really insane.
It's just frustrating because they don't even need it. So it's like, okay, that's fine. We'll just starve here.
Yeah. But anyway, to move on, I want to ask you, how was it for you in Egypt during Corona? There's still Corona with these lockdowns. Theater is closed, performing. How did you manage in these times?
Yeah, well, I got myself a job. I stopped doing theater because everything was closed. There was nothing to do, honestly. I mean, like I told you before, but maybe again for the people, during the first year of COVID, the 2020, I was lucky enough because I got a chance to work on one of my pieces, and we had very limited resources, so I was rehearsing inside my house in my living room, and we I worked together with a friend of mine who's also an artist who works in theater, but was out of work, and the place where she worked in a theater company actually that made theater for children, and the company was closed because of COVID. And this company was, I think, 10 or 11 years old, and until now they're not back to working. They completely shut down. So she had lost her job. She had nothing else to do. So I asked her if she could help me, and in return, because I didn't have any money to pay her, so I told her that whatever money that would come from this project, we would split it later on. So we started working together, and we would meet in my house, and we would rehearse in my living room. And then we went around in different actually cities around Egypt, and we performed this play. We performed outdoors, indoors, with very limited number of audience because of COVID, and it was still fresh and there were still many restrictions. But we were lucky that we got away with this one project. And then after that, it was very slow. There was nothing we could do. Everything was shut down. Nothing was working. So I had to get a job. I started working online for an interpretation company, and I was interpreting over the phone. I spent a whole year doing that, and it was very time consuming, very energy consuming. I wasn't able to work on anything that I wanted. I wasn't able to work on any projects. I wasn't able to think about art whatsoever. So eventually I decided that I will quit this job because I can't do it. And until now, it's very unstable for me, honestly. Like, I've been broke for a very long time now. I have no money whatsoever. And recently, thankfully, I have now a theater project that I'm working on that I'm hoping would make some money at least.
So, just to ask another thing, what are some of your successful projects that you have done as an artist?
I'm sorry. Can you say that again?
I mean, I was asking, what are some of your successful projects that you have done as an artist?
Yeah. Well, my successful project, I would say, honestly, I'm still for theater with children, for theater for children. I mean, I'm still working on it, this project, but it was the show that I performed for the kids in 2020. I really enjoyed that, and I think the children liked it too, but it was still a work in progress. So I'm still working on it, and I hope that it works out this time, and I can call it my most successful project.
Yeah, okay. But already you have done more other projects, like you have been part of some good, wonderful projects in Egypt that you already mentioned to me some time back.
Yes, I worked on so many different projects since I joined the theater group in college. We actually created some very interesting shows. The time when I first joined the theater group, it was the first year after the revolution happened here in Egypt. It was in 2012. And we created a very interesting piece, and when I think about it today, it's still wonderful, and it amazes me how we put those things together and how we came up with that performance, because it was everyone wrote a part of it, wrote a piece of it, put their heart into it, expressed themselves, and then it all came together very beautifully. So it was a very nice collective work, and everyone got to share and tell part of their story and their struggle during that time. So it was a very interesting project. And the year after that, we also did another amazing project. Like, I've done so many great projects, honestly, that I'm very thankful for. And also in 2019, where I met you, that was also one of the greatest projects that I've been a part of, which was the Spice Road project. And that was the collaboration project. That gathered artists from different parts of the world, and we started to work together also collectively, everyone sharing their story. And until today, I'm very, very, very angry, if I have to say, that this project didn't work out till the end and was interrupted by COVID. And until today, I keep thinking about it, and I really hope that one day we get back to working on this project and we focus on it for a bit. But it's very difficult though.
Yeah, definitely. In our next part of the conversation, we shall go deep into collaborations and we get to know more about this project that Isra is talking about. Yeah. So anyway, I wanted to, because of time, I look at my time here, and I think I just need to ask you the last question. Yeah. Like, what would you advise someone who wants to be an artist in Egypt?
Just do it. Just do what you love, but always start by thinking of ways to sustain yourself as a person, because art doesn't necessarily pay. If you can find a way to make a living through art, that's amazing. That's great. But otherwise, I think it's always good to find a way to sustain yourself besides doing your art. So if you can start a small business, if you can get a part-time job or something that you can do on the side that will get you money, will sustain your life while you work on your art. I think that's the most important thing, because art needs you to be focused and passionate and really into it. You can't be constantly worried about how you will survive, because that will just weigh you down and will not let you really express yourself as an artist.
Yeah, and that brings it just came up now because I put it somewhere. How do you make it as a female artist in Egypt? How is it like? If you are free to share or not to share about it.
Yeah, well, it's definitely a bit of a struggle being female in general, not just artist, but add to that artist as well. It's always a struggle because it feels like you're always trying to prove yourself extra just because you're female. But so far it's working out fine. I just don't let it get to me. I completely ignore it, and I think it's how you see yourself that matters. And if you think that it doesn't make a difference what you are, and you just focus on your work and just ignore whatever everyone says or does, I think sometimes, most of the time, people just, because you don't feel it yourself and you don't let them get to you through it, you don't face the problem. Sometimes some people are just like that and they just want to cause the problem and just want to discriminate against women. But these people, you just have to face them and just, stand up to them. But otherwise, I think it's fine. It's a fight, of course, because I don't know any other way. Honestly, I don't know what it's like for male artists. But for me, it's part of the fight. So it's fine, I guess.
I respect you, my friend, for what you do as an artist, regardless of what the society thinks about which gender does what and what not.
Thank you, my friend.
Yeah, I respect you, my friend, for that. Do you have anything you would like to share with the audience in this particular part of the conversation before we close it up?
No, I would just like to thank them for tuning in with us and for listening to my story so far. And I hope they enjoy it.
Yeah, how dear listeners, we cannot continue beyond now. And for that reason, I would like to say, join us in the next episode of this same conversation. I'd like to say bye for now.
We not only have voices for a podcast, but also faces for YouTube. Don't miss your next episode. Hear my true story.
Thank you for listening to our podcast, Music by Edwin Matovo, hosted and produced by Otako. Subscribe to our podcast for more stories and visit us on our website, hearmytruestory.com, for more stories. All the links are listed in the show notes of this podcast.